Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier this year, I called for a comprehensive investigation into the causes of our financial crisis because I believe that the American people deserved a full accounting of what happened. I also believe that such an accounting would be absolutely necessary to lay a foundation for any future legislation. At that time, I drew a parallel between the Great Depression of the 30s and the near collapse of our financial system in late 2008. 80 years ago, as this nation began its descent into what Milton Friedman termed the Great Contraction, this committee launched what was to become known as the Pecora investigation. It was by all accounts an exhaustive examination of not only the origin of the '29 crash, but also of the individuals involved, including some of the most powerful financial figures in the country. The committee's investigation went on for more than 2 years and laid the foundation for groundbreaking legislation, including the Banking Act of 1933, which created the FDIC, the Securities Act of '33, and the Securities Exchange Act of '34, which created the Securities and Exchange Commission. Ultimately, Chairman Dodd chose not to pursue a committee-led investigation. Rather, over my initial objections, he advocated for the creation of an independent commission to examine and to report on the origins and causes of the crisis. In the absence of a committee effort, I reluctantly supported its creation. The irony is that the commission will not report their findings and recommendations until late next year, long after the President apparently wants a bill on his desk. As the Chairman has said many times over the past year, this committee has held dozens of hearings. Some of them were focused on topics that were directly relevant to the crisis. Many were not. The committee has heard from a number of witnesses over the past several months. Many of these are experts in their fields, and they had a great deal to say about what they thought happened and on how we should go about fixing it. Expert opinions are interesting and often very valuable, but in the end, they're just opinions. Legislation should be based on more than just opinions. We meet today to begin the consideration of a 1,139-page bill that purports to remake the entire financial services regulatory structure. I don't believe that I can express in words what a monumentally significant undertaking this is. Every citizen and every American business will be touched in some way by this legislation that we're pursuing. Its reach can be predicted in some ways and is entirely unknown in others. It is the type of legislation that should be supported, I believe, by an exhaustive factual record and then be thoroughly scrutinized in its own right. I'm afraid that this bill fails both tests. The Chairman has proposed legislation that he said will protect, quote, consumers and our economy from another crisis like the one we're now in. Comforting words, but are they true? One way to find out is to compare what we know about what happened with what this bill would actually do. The problem is that we don't actually know what happened, not everything. That work is still being done by the Commission, among others. Certainly at this point, we must know something about what happened. Many witnesses have accounted their impressions and conclusions. All too often, however, even the experts have done little to no due diligence of their own. Once again, opinions are nice, but facts are better. If our goal is to protect consumers and our economy from another crisis, we should gather, I believe, every bit of information available on every facet of the current crisis. We should then conduct our own analysis and reach our own conclusions. Unfortunately, I don't believe we did that. For example, AIG was at the epicenter of the crisis. One would think that this committee would have gathered all of the relevant data associated with the activities within AIG's Financial Products Division and interviewed everyone that had anything to do with that debacle, including its senior management. One would think we have done this, but that one would be wrong. Bear Stearns was the first major financial institution to falter at the beginning of the crisis. One would think that we would have gathered all the information associated with Bear Stearns' activities and interviewed everyone that had anything to do with the failure of that institution. One would think we would have done this, but one would be wrong. Lehman Brothers was the next to fall when it became apparent that the federal government was not going to bail them out. one would think that we would have conducted a thorough review of Lehman's activities and its risk management practices. Again, one would be wrong. The chairman has repeatedly asserted that one of the main causes of this crisis was predatory lending. With that in mind, one would think that the committee would have conducted an exhaustive examination of predatory lending practices by investigating claims of fraud and deposing dozens of alleged predators. I think by now you get my point. Mr. Chairman, I will repeat probably for the last time, knowing your determination to proceed, that this committee has not done, I believe, the necessary work to even begin discussing changes of this magnitude. Nevertheless, I know we're planning to move forward. You've laid down a bill before the committee, and I will explain as quickly as I can this morning why I will not be supporting it at this time. I apologize if it takes some time, Mr. Chairman. It is, after all, a very, very big bill.